wildlife don't have nearly as much influence. But we're going to have to figure out, these fossil fuels are finite, so we're going to have to figure out energy systems that are not dependent on these fossil fuels anyway. So why don't we do that sooner and save the planet for the benefit of future generations? I think that, well, we have to try to do it via the democratic process. But it is difficult because, as I've already intimated, the money talks in Washington and other capitals around the world. I think that you're going to see more and more public protest as the public begins to understand better what's happening and as the climate change becomes more obvious. The problem is that we're running out of time. If we go even 10 more years without beginning to phase out coal, it's going to be impractical to get back to a safe level of CO2. And I think it's kind of a curious coincidence. I gave a talk at Lexington several months ago, and Lexington was sort of the place of the first skirmish in the war, the Revolutionary War. But the real war started at Concord with a much larger battle, and I think there's been some slowdown in the building of new plants, but it hasn't yet sunk in that we're going to have to phase out existing coal plants, and that will become very clear over the next several years or next decade. It will become clear that we have to phase out existing coal plants. So it makes no sense. So, and that's going to be the real war, because it's so much easier to just continue doing what you're doing. Unfortunately, there's no way that we can get CO2 back to a safe level unless we phase out the existing coal plants, as well as not building new ones, unless they actually capture the CO2 and put it in the ground. And that's why it makes no sense to refurbish old coal-fired power plants, because that's wasted money. Eventually, there's going to be no choice when the public really understands this. And as I say, there's this gap between what has become clear scientifically and what the public realizes. But the bottom line is we are going to have to eliminate emissions from coal if we hope to keep a planet that resembles the one that we've had the last 10,000 years. To allow the ice sheets to become unstable, because there are more than 1 billion people who live along coastlines and cities along coastlines. So we just can't do that. And once this becomes crystal clear, the public will demand that, and then it will be much more expensive. It makes more sense now to start now and gradually over, and even that is going to be a difficult job to phase out coal over the next 20 years, but it simply makes no sense at all to refurbish a coal plant. I think that's just wasted money. I think I will stop at that point, and we can, I guess we're going to have another presentation. Is that right, or we're going to have questions?
Thank you, Dr. Hansen, Thank you, Dr. Hansen, for your compelling presentation, and your presence here is exceedingly timely today for two reasons. One, we have two U.S. senators who will probably determine over the course of this coming year whether a strong climate bill will be filibustered or killed by coal interests. And this very day, also timely, across the street in the Legislative Office Building, our state Senate is grappling with a bill that will determine the fate of one of our old coal-fired power plants, the Merrimack Station plant right near here. And Dr. Hansen has shown us that carbon dioxide pollution is very, very far from free, and that's right now. And in fact, we have 2 preliminary studies quantifying this for New Hampshire ratepayers. If we do not close Merrimack Station, it'll cost them about $100 million more per year to pay for the consequences of putting the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere primarily for the next 20 years. And about $10, to put this down into very graphic form, it's about $10 per month for the average residential ratepayer for the next 20 years to pay for some of the consequences that you see here that are going to be internalized. The public is going to demand this. Fortunately, we have some really good news, which is because energy efficiency measures have kicked in so aggressively in New England and the Northeast over the past 3 years. For example, the light bulbs you see up above here, these CFLs, we have had a wonderful decrease in demand for energy, and the price of energy has gone down, of electricity, and there's a surplus, so that if we wish to, we could simply shut down the Merrimack Station coal plant, and ratepayers would save quite a bit of money. The air would be cleaner, there'd be less mercury in the atmosphere. And the wonderful thing is, the other wonderful thing is there'd be more jobs as a result of the changes, and all of the energy we need to shut down that plant is available on the ISO New England grid right now in abundant surplus because of things like putting in these light bulbs, and we're going to tap that. So the choices faced by our U.S. and state senators are really political, they're not technical, and we only need to make sure, all of us here, that Dr. Hansen's messages of urgency reaches our 2 bodies. And Dr. Hansen will now take questions from legislators first. There are 2 microphones here. If legislators could go first. We have 15 minutes for this, and then for members of the public who wish to.
I'm not a legislator, but I don't think any came up. So, my name's Kurt Olson, Dr. Hansen, and I contacted you last year relative to appearing at a conference at our school where I teach a class on global warming. And the interesting thing to me, and I guess I would hope that you respond to this, students constantly come in, and I guess they're still among the deniers, and will bring in, like, for instance, most recently, this past weekend, the New York Times Magazine had a front cover picture of Freeman Dyson, who I guess is one of the main deniers. And I was just wondering if you could explain to us why there is still traction among those who would deny that global warming is really a problem. People like Richard Lindzen, I guess, at MIT, and Freeman Dyson, and various others around the country who still are able to get press.
Well, of course, science thrives on skepticism. So every scientist, when he hears some other scientist say something, will naturally be skeptical. That's, and in the case of a person like Freeman Dyson, he has not been involved in climate research, and I'm not surprised that people who have not been involved are skeptical. They need to do their homework and look at the research that has been done. Others like Dick Lindzen and the others who are the professional contrarians, who they are in fact not acting like a scientist. He is acting like a lawyer in that he cites only evidence on one side of the story. A scientist will look at all the evidence and will adjust his opinion as the evidence becomes stronger or as new evidence comes in. But the professional contrarians are, they keep getting proved wrong on one thing after another as the real world continues to proceed. Dick Lindzen, for example, in the late 1980s said global warming was less than 1/10 of a degree.